हेलो गाइस, वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल्स। और इस वीडियो में हम लोग पढ़ेंगे व्हाट इज द एक्सेप्शन हायरार्की एंड हाउ यू कैन यूज द एक्सेप्शन इन योर क्लासेस एंड व्हाट इज द यूज ऑफ इट। सो एवरीथिंग आई एम गोइंग टू डिस्कस अबाउट इन दिस वीडियो। सो लेट्स कैच अप द प्रीवियस वीडियो। ओके, सो प्रीवियस क्लास में हम लोग पढ़े थे like what is the exception. Okay, so exception is nothing but it is a one of the class. Exception is nothing but it is a one of the class which is used to handle the any exception or problems in our code. That is called exception. Okay, yeah, anything is happen suddenly in your code and it's break the normal flow of the program. That is called exception. What is exception handling? Exception handling is one of the technique which is used to handle the problem, issue, yeah, anything will happen in your code. You can handle it and you can provide some different way to execute remaining things. That is called exception handling. You can handle the exception. You can handle the exception through the some keyword like try, catch, throw, throws. Those are the very important keyword. Through that you can handle all those exception. Okay. Finally, I'm going to talk about in this video what is the exception hierarchy. So before going to understood exception hierarchy, let's see these pictures. Okay, so in these pictures you can see the every class in Java, the every class, the parent class is object. You already know about it and aware about it. But if you talk about the exception parent class is throwable. So you are talking about the throwable. Throwable having a two types. Yeah, you can say two sub-child classes. That is called error or exception. If you talk about the error is nothing but it's a unhandled issue. Like for example, you are doing something and your computer is like suddenly shut down. Yeah, memory is lost. Yeah, something undependent like you can't expect it that will happen. Yeah, crash your program, yeah, crash your PC. That is called nothing but error. So error like IO error, virtual machine error, stack overflow error, out of memory error. For example, you run some program which is running infinitely loop and it's going on and it's consuming the lots of memory. Then it will come like a stack overflow error. Yeah, memory out of bound error. So like that issue you can't handle it. You have to focus on your code and you have to identify like where is the exactly issue, where I have done mistake, why it's running the infinite time. So those things I'm not going to talk about because we can't handle the error things. We can just predicate and we can fix it. Okay. But going to the exception part is very important. You have to handle it and you have to provide the some alternate way so that the people or clients who are using your application he can understood okay this is the issue is happened so that our machine is not doing proper work. Okay, for example, exception it means as a programmer you can face lots of the exception. The very popular exception is null pointer exception. If you go to the exception having a two parts further, runtime exception or compile time exception. Runtime exception means the exception which is come after running your code, means that your program is working fine, everything is fine, but suddenly, for example, you are expecting the input from the user is integer, but he given some other data, he given some float double type of the data, then automatically you get some exception because the whatever you are expecting he will not provided those data, so it will say input mismatch exception, right? So like that you can see so many exception as a programmer. So सबसे जो very famous null pointer exception is very famous and every programmer heard about it. And other is arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception is nothing but you are doing some operations and arithmetically you are doing some calculation which is going to the infinite. If something it's wrong you divided something, like you divided some value with the zero, that is called arithmetic exception. Like value become the infinite, you can't handle it, because whatever the data type you have in your Java or any programming language, he is not able to store your infinite type of the value. It's a very big value, so he will not able to handle it, so he will simply say arithmetic exception. Okay, so here having exception, null pointer exception, arithmetic exception, so those exception are nothing but runtime exception. All the error are also runtime exception. You can say unchecked exception, you can't check it, it will come on a runtime. Whatever you are seeing the yellow color here, those are the runtime exception, and you can't handle it at a compile time. Okay, so very famous questions in the interview is what is the runtime and what is the compile time, and so many people are confused also in that. Compile time, it means that it's a compulsory to handle it. If you not handle, you can't go forward. You can get the exception at a compile time only. You can't compile also your code. That is called compile time exception. You must have to handle it. For example, you are open one file, file f equal to new file, a buffer reader equal to new buffer readers. Okay, so you are creating some connection with the file, and you are not written those statement inside the try and catch block. It means you are not handling it. So definitely when you compile your code, you get some exception. Get it? So that is called compile time exception. But what about the runtime? Runtime, you don't know. Your syntax is fine, your code is fine, everything is fine. But at a runtime, if he given some wrong value, if you whatever the loop you are using, it will call some array index the more than of the index. Like you have one array, the size of the array is 10, and you are trying to fetch the index number 10, but array index start from the 0, it will go up to 9 only, because you have a 10 size, it will go 0 to 9. But you are trying to expect or fetch the data from the 10 of the index, so that index is not available, so you can get array index out of bound exception. So like that exception, you can't like expect it at a compile time, you only got those exception at a runtime, so that is called runtime exception. I hope you are clear for that. But I'm going to talk about like what is the IO exception. Okay, IO exception means whenever you are trying to communicate with some stream. Stream means the flow of the data. You are going to fetch some data from your file or some databases, yeah, some other things where you have to write the condition as a input output exception. Apart from this, you have so many exception. If you go with the advanced Java, if you talk about the Spring Boot, Spring, having apart from lots of the exception, but those are the basic exception, and you have to understand it. So whenever the interviewer asks you what is the error, simply say error is nothing but it's a one of the type of the exception, but error will come at a runtime. We can't handle it. If you predict it also, you can just fix it. Like you can increase your memory size, you can set up in the different way, you can fix it. Okay, but it's a unhandled exception, you can say. He will impress. If you talk about runtime exception, compile time exception, you can talk about, like you can simply say like the runtime exception, it means it will come at runtime. You can't predicate or you can't handle it at compile time. It's not necessary to handle also at compile time. So those are the runtime exception, but it's a necessary, it's a mandatory to handle at a compile time. That is called compile time exception or checked exception. Unchecked or checked. Simple. Okay, I'm going to talk about some null pointer exception. Why null pointer exception is happen? Okay, and slowly I will talk about how can you handle with the try catch, how you can use try catch block, how you can handle throws, how you can use it also, and also I will going to introduce what is the finally block, how you can handle it, how you can use it. Okay, so let's go to the code. Here I have written one class called demo. I will tell you. For example, in this class, in this class, I have a one method like main method. Okay, main. In this main method, I'm going to create outside the main method I'm going to create one more method. So I will simply here write like I will write on methods public, not going to give any statics, so just publics void display. Display is the method name. I will simply write s out my display method. It's a simple normal method I have created, and here I can call this method through the exception demo. So I simply came here and I have written exception demo. Okay, and through the demo I try to call display method. Okay, demo dot display is saying the local variable demo must be the initialize, so I will initialize with the null. Okay, there is no issue now. Simply you can see that this exception demo class demo reference having a null. Okay, and you are calling this method demo with display methods. Simply sometimes it's happen. So if you run this, you get null pointer exception. Simply here you can see you can get null pointer exception, java.lang.null pointer exception. Why? Because whatever the class with you are calling the method, that class reference is nothing but null. If it is null and through the null reference you are calling any method, it will get null pointer exception. So these exception you can check, you can handle it. How? You can simply write if demo not equal to null, then only call this method. Otherwise don't call it. Or you can write in else block s out something wrong. So right now you can't get any exception, because if this object is not initialized with object, it's exactly null, so you can handle it. Demo not equal to null, then only call this display method, otherwise don't call it. You can run it, you can see something wrong, it will not given the null pointer exception now. So this is the one of the way to handle it. Okay, for example, you have so many lines of the code here. So for example, if you got some exception here and you don't want to handle like that, okay, then that place you have to write the try and catch block. So here you can write try, and those code you can put inside this try, and through the catch you can handle it. So this is the good programming or good style of the writing a code. Okay, I'm just giving the demo. Something going wrong. Okay, something going wrong. It means something is issue is happened, so you can simply use the try and catch block and you can handle the exception. Okay, so I hope you understood what is the null pointer exception, why you are getting the null pointer exception. So you have to check each and everything. Okay, for example, if you write some line of the code like s out and you are just dividing 3 divided by 0, so here it will divide, it's try to divide, but it will get arithmetic exception. Why? Because you are dividing the value by the 0. So like that. So you can tell to the interviewer, hey interviewer, yeah, hey, anything, whatever the his name, you can say when you are getting the null point exception, when you are getting the arithmetic exception. So you have to explain them, like what is exactly happen behind it. If you not tell them, he will not understood and he will reject you. So better to go and tell him like why you are getting the null pointer exception, why you are getting the arithmetic exception. So null pointer exception means if your object reference is null and you are calling with reference some method, then you are getting the null pointer exception. Arithmetic exception means you are dividing some value with 0, then you are getting arithmetic exception. So like that we have some condition, some situation where you are getting the those classes exception, and better to go with this, handle with this exception with the try and catch, throw and throws finally. So like that we can handle all those exception. I hope आपको समझ में आया होगा. Thank you so much. We can meet next video and we can learn how to use try catch, how to use throws, and finally block also, and how you can write the better way of the program so that everyone can understood and everyone can analyze your code and he will feel good like you are a good programmers. Thank you so much. We can meet with the next video.